Yo, what's going on? Hope you're doing good. My name's David the Crook and welcome to today's video where I sit down here and answer your questions that you have. But before we get into the video, if you could please subscribe, drop a like, and throughout the video, if you have any questions or if you have a question yourself, leave it down below in the comment section or email it to me, send it to me on social media. Everything will be down below in the description. Today's question is, should you buy third-party plugins? I'm going to say yes, but at the same time, I'm going to say no. I'm going to give you my full honest opinion on this because yes, third-party plugins do help if you know what you're doing. And I'm going to say no because if you don't know what you're doing, those third-party plugins aren't going to help you. If you clearly can't hear the differences between the EQs or the compressors and stuff like that, there's no point of buying a $30 compressor, a $50. I don't really know how much the compressors go for, to be honest, but there's no point of buying that compressor when your DAW has one. Using one compressor free that's within your DAW, for example, Logic Pro X, using the stock Logic Pro X compressor won't make that much of a difference compared if I was to use a wave compressor. If I was going to use like a analog obsession compressor, if I was going to use a Slate digital compressor, the differences between the compressors won't really matter if I don't know what I'm doing. You know what I mean? So you really have to know exactly what you're doing, how to use the compressors, use the EQs, use the reverbs, the effects, and the stuff like that to really maximize the plugin, getting the most out of that plugin. Whether you use a free EQ or a Waves EQ, it won't really make a difference. You won't really be able to hear or know what you're doing with the plugin to be able to maximize it. So it kind of just depends on where you're at. If you're a beginner and you're new to mixing and you don't really know what you're doing, you're kind of just understanding it. You're kind of just mixing songs. You're getting the feel of mixing and stuff like that. I wouldn't recommend you to buy plugins. There's no point. Your DAW has a whole bunch of plugins, compressors, EQs, reverbs, delays, preamps, choruses. Every type of plugin you need is going to be in your DAW. So learn how to use those. Also, there's a bunch of free plugins you can use. I made a whole ebook with 100 plus free plugins that you could just download, click it, download it for free, and use it. So there's not really a need to waste $30, $40, $50 on a plugin that you don't really know how to use. It's not going to make that much of a difference. I made that mistake when I first got into mixing. I was mixed a couple songs, whatever. And then I got that buyer syndrome or that hoarding mentality of, oh, I need every plugin. Any plugin I can get my hands on, I'm going to get it. And what I do, I bought some Wave plugins. I bought the Gold Bundle. I bought some other third-party plugins. I don't really remember the name, but it's not important. I bought some other plugins. And then I had a whole list of plugins that when I was mixing, I was like, well, what plugin do I use? I know I have to use a compressor, but what out of the 10 compressors am I going to use? You get what I mean? So it's like, I could have just used the free plugins, the stock plugins, and gotten a better mix. Gotten just as good as a mix as using a third-party plugin, or even better, because I could have really understood and really known how to use the stock compressor. Now, over the time, as you get better at mixing, as you understand mixing, as you really understand how to use a compressor, how to use an EQ, I mostly reference these two plugins because those are ones we use the most in mixing. A reverb, yeah, there's a lot of different types of reverbs. They're not really going to make that much of a difference. The stock Logic Pro X reverb has hella reverb types. Any type of reverb, hall, a space, stadium, whatever type of sound you're going for, it's going to be in there. So there's no point of buying like the Sound Toys reverb because it's kind of like the same thing, if I'm being completely honest. Yeah, there's songs I use this one because it sounds better, But in general, you could find it in a free plugin. And once you really understand how to use, for example, the EQs and the compressors, then I'll say, yeah, buy some third-party plugins. Because if I'm being completely honest, when I do use wave compressors, I do hear the difference and I do like how it sounds. Not necessarily because it looks cool or because everybody else is using it, but if I get the CLA 76 and I turn it on the black compressor, I could hear how it makes it give it that rap sound, like that enclosed sound. And if I were to switch it within the same plugin to the bluey, which is the white and blue one, I could hear how it's more open, more spacious, I guess you could say is the word. So I could hear the differences between the compressors. I could hear the difference between if I bring up the stock Logic Pro X compressors and I use the VCA Vintage, the last one, compared to the first one, the Blue Studio, I'm assuming it's called. I could hear the differences between those. I could hear the difference between the red one, the black one, the white one. I don't really know the names off the top of my head. I just more am a visual person. So when I click on it, I could kind of see which one it is and what it does. But in general, I could hear and I could understand, okay, I'm recording a rap song. It's going to be more of a trap, or it's a trap song. So I'm going to use the CLA 76. I'm going to use the black one. I'm going to use the stock Logic Pro X compressor, and I'm going to use the white one. I think it's a Vintage FET, I'm assuming. I don't really know. Don't quote me on the types of compressors in the Logic one. I don't really know the names of them. I just know how to use them. So once you really understand the differences and how to use them, then yeah, buy third-party plugins. If you're new to it, if you're understanding mixing, if you're not really sure of what you're doing when it comes to mixing, stick to the stock plugins. Get some free plugins. Don't get all of the free plugins, because then you're just going to have that, like, you're going to feel overwhelmed in some type of way when you're mixing. Mixing should come naturally. Mixing should come at ease to some extent. So having too many plugins kind of just, it messes up your workflow, it messes things up. I have hella plugins, and to be honest, I don't really use them all. You know what I mean? So a lot of that money I spent on buying third-party plugins kind of just went to waste because I hardly even touch those plugins. I have my go-to plugins that I always use, that I constantly use. And just with those plugins, I could pretty much mix and master anything. Don't really matter the genre. Don't really matter what type of song it is. In general, with those plugins, I could mix it. And I have plugins that I got and I never used. Probably just one time just to test it out, see what it does. But in general, I don't really use them. So this is something you have to ask yourself, is whether you should get third-party plugins or just stick to the stock ones. So something I want you to do is really just analyze and self-reflect within yourself and be honest with yourself. Do you actually understand what you're doing when you're mixing? If it's a yes, and you want to buy some third-party plugins, then go for it. Invest into those plugins because they will help you mix. They will give you a different color, a different tone, a different feeling to your music. But if you don't really know what you're hearing and know what you're doing, then buying that plugin is not really going to make that much of a difference compared to using a stock one or getting a free one. Like I said, I have an ebook with over 100 plugins that you could get for free. Literally anything you're looking for is going to be in there. So those plugins can help you get better at your mixing, understand, see the differences between one compressor and the other, one EQ versus the other. Now there's different type of plugins. There's plugins that don't add color to your vocals. For example, the stock Logic Pro X E channel, the normal EQ. That plugin doesn't add any noise, any color onto your vocals, which is good because you need that at certain times. But at the same time, if you get a plugin like the SSL E channel from Waves, that plugin does add some type of noise, some type of color onto your vocals that makes it sound good to some extent. So what plugin do I use? I use them both depending on what I'm mixing. But in general, I gravitate towards the SSL just because I like how it sounds. I like what it does to the vocals. I like how when I put it at 16K and I boost it 16K, how it makes the vocal sound crispy. If I were to just boost it 16K on the normal stock EQ, yeah, it might sound crispy, it might sound cool, but the slope that's being used on the SSL is different than the one on the free plugin. So you really have to understand. Also, another thing that you have to understand is plugins aren't going to make your mixes sound good. I could slap on 20, 10, 15 plugins on a vocal chain, and it's not going to make the vocal chain sound good. You really have to know what you're doing with the plugins, like I said. So before you even get to mixing, you have to get a good recording. I go over all of this in my ebook, Recording Pro Vocals. So if you need help when it comes to recording vocals, if you want to make it effortlessly, if you want to know how to set everything up so you just run everything smoothly, save you a whole bunch of time, really understand what your equipment is doing, how to run everything effortlessly to get nice, clean, dry recordings. That way, when you move on to the mixing stage, everything runs a lot smoother, but you actually have something to mix that doesn't have a lot of background noise, that doesn't have unnecessary noise, that isn't messing up your mixing. I think one of the last videos I dropped when I was mixing a song by Arsoul, there was a point where he was rapping, but because I had the threshold, the noise gate, I had it too far down. And there's this, I think he said highway, or he said some word, and you could barely hear it in the recording. And that's where I messed up, because I should have heard that from the beginning. But obviously it slipped past me. And when I was mixing it, as I got to that part, there was nothing I could do to fix it for the most part. So getting that good recording right away, that's what really makes a difference. Because when it comes to the mixing, you kind of already know what to do. You got the EQs, you got the compressors, you have the delays, you have the reverbs, you have preamps. You have stuff that you can add onto the vocals that, when you understand what you're doing, is going to make your vocal sound good. But you can't polish crap, per se. So if your vocals aren't good, in the mixing stage, there's not really much you could do. So when it comes to the recording stage, that's the very first thing that, and the most important thing that you need to do. And I go over all of that in my ebook, Recording Pro Vocals. So if you're looking into getting both ebooks, down below in the description, I have a special link for you that you could get at a discounted rate, get both ebooks. That way you understand how to record. You never have a problem with that. Solves all of your problems, all the headaches, and when it comes to recording, because I literally break everything down. How to solve the problems with your equipment, with your DAW, make sure everything is running smooth. There's no delay in the vocals, because then when you're recording and there's a delay, things don't really match up. And you will have the tools, the EQs, the compressors, everything necessary to be able to mix those vocals to get that professional sounding quality song. You can check that out down below in the description. Also, if you have any questions, leave them down below in the comment section. Email me, send me a message on social media. Everything you need will be down below in the description. My name is David the Crook, and I hope to see you in the next video. Peace.